Hello, and welcome to Thriving, Not Just Surviving, a series on the Family Renewed channel. I am Dr. Dawn, and my goal is to help you renew, restore, and revive your joy. So, as a reminder, this month our series is Black in America, Thriving, Not Just Surviving. And before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge the efforts of two exceptional Black quarterbacks in today's Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs and Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles, who both led their teams in extraordinary fashion. And yes, hats off to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am a lifelong fan. Now, today we are laying the groundwork for understanding the role of culture in building and navigating relationships. If you recall, last week when we started this series, we talked about Boykin's triple quandary and how Blacks in America must balance the experience of navigating three cultures: the Anglo-American majority, the marginalized minority, and the Afrocentric worldview. I also introduced the first C of the ABCs of family resiliency, capitalizing on your strengths. Today, we will explore how understanding and recognizing the power and uniqueness of culture can help you define and capitalize on your strengths so you too can create and maintain healthier, more productive relationships. But first, before we get into Edward T. Hall's cultural iceberg model and how understanding culture can help you define and capitalize on your strengths, do you remember how we do it? That's right. We're going to start by completing those positivity prompts, if you haven't already done so. Now, take out your journal and write your responses to these three prompts. First, one thing I like about myself is. Second, one thing good that happened this past week was. And third, one thing I'm thankful for would be. Now remember, you must be intentional because this positive energy is your superpower and it will help you guard against the negativity you will face today, tomorrow, and in the future. Now, let's get right into it. Hall proposed that understanding someone's culture can be thought of much like an iceberg, where you can only see roughly 10% of one's culture, which is on the outside and above the surface, whereas the other 90% of one's culture is on the inside and beneath the surface. Too often, we make assumptions about someone based on what we see because of our own experiences in our families, our communities, or our institutions like schools and the media and forms of sports and entertainment. The thoughts and feelings attached to our experiences actually shape how and what we think about ourselves and others. Our experiences throughout our lives, especially those from the beginning, will be the foundation for our future beliefs, consciously and unconsciously. So when we think about culture, we have to go beyond the surface and consider the customs, the arts, the social institutions, and the achievements of a particular social group. It's complex, but today we are going to break it down into three sections, like Hall's iceberg metaphor. What you can see above the surface, just below the surface, and what you believe to be there, but you just can't see. Now, because of these complexities, it makes sense why most people don't have a good understanding or awareness of someone else's culture. It takes time and effort to truly appreciate someone's culture, and all too often people are unwilling to take the time to go beyond what they see in order to learn more about another's culture. You know, we all have busy lives, and it's easy to fall into a rhythm where we are unable or unwilling to engage with others on a level beyond superficial. In the end, we often end up making assumptions about that person and their culture based on the external physical characteristics or their behaviors, the things that we can see. These visible characteristics don't tell the whole story and often lead to assumptions and stereotypes that affect how we interact with people from other cultures. So what are the elements of culture that are below the surface? Well, the beliefs, or how a culture sees or values its institutions, the ideals, what the group believes is best for the group, the norms or the expected behaviors or actions for the group, and the roles and expectations of someone's identity within the group. And at the deepest level of the cultural iceberg, we can find those things that are more abstract, which, include things like our emotions or feelings or attitudes that we associate within our cultural experiences. So In order to better understand the elements of a culture that lie beneath the surface, we really need to actively seek to understand and appreciate these other cultures. Again, moving out of our comfort zones. Now, I know when I was growing up, I was taught not to believe everything I heard. A statement that is probably more true today than it was back then. So, like our mamas and our teachers used to say, we must do our own research. So we must take an active role and engage our senses in what we are experiencing. By expanding your cultural awareness, you will learn how to build relationships through capitalizing on your strengths of opportunity and access. I currently sponsor a local high school club that was created to promote positive images of African Americans in the school and the community. The club creates interactive programs and events to highlight the contributions of African Americans and hopefully bring in people to experience different parts of our culture. Unfortunately, some members have been asked by their peers things like, I thought you were good. Why do you need a club like that? Or, that's lame. What's the point? And the members often respond with statements like, because we don't get this in our school. These are things that people don't always understand about thinking about another's culture. So, through our activities, we hope to provide opportunities for anyone who is interested in learning more about Afrocentric culture and the contributions of African Americans. We all have a lot to learn, and by providing opportunities to learn about each other's cultures, we can begin to fill the gap and create a shared sense of pride in the melting pot of our idealized American culture. Now, by broadening the exploration of cultures, we can all learn about the breadth and the majesty of all people, and our opportunities for growth will be limitless. I was blessed to be raised in a multicultural neighborhood where we had shared experiences from childhood on. We learned to appreciate each other's for who we were, and we learned about each other's cultures, our values, and shared beliefs. While others were unique to our different cultural groups, some were very similar. We have often discussed how our relationships are still even strong today, and we've even contemplating coming together and writing a book about the value of our shared experiences. These values started with our parents and were passed down to us. But again, it was intentionality. They took the time to make this happen, and this time and effort are key. So how do we expand on our understanding of the first C of the ABCs of family resiliency, capitalizing on your strengths? Well, we must first remember these strategies are universal and can be used in any setting that requires the navigation of relationships. Last week, I asked you to think about your strengths, and then I asked you to commit to doing 3 things to capitalize them in building relationships. Now, if you completed the tasks, I want you to reflect on them in the context of the cultural iceberg with the following 3 questions. And if you haven't, please go back and review last week's post and catch up. So the first is, what strength did you choose, and was it successful in starting or deepening a relationship? Second, considering a cultural context for you and the person you selected, what surface or visible characteristics do you think may have influenced the interaction? And 3, what under the surface characteristics do you think may have influenced the interaction? Now, I'm asking you to reflect on these questions because it gets back to understanding how culture plays a role in all of our relationships. My understanding of the value of culture is because of the intentional actions by the adults I grew up around, and it taught me that culture is to be celebrated and shared. Being able to see things from the lens of others is key to healthy relationships, and it led me to want to sponsor this club and help these students create the same for themselves and those around them. So if there is one thing you remember from this segment, remember culture is key to building healthy relationships. It is a powerful tool and a strength that you can capitalize on in all of your relationships. And if you are intentional about your own cultural awareness, you too will thrive and not just survive. Now, if something I mentioned in today's segment resonated with you, please leave a comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Lastly, I hope you will join me, Dr. Dawn, next week for more discussion about the systemic racism and Black in America thriving, not just surviving.